we have another reaction video. When 7 YouTubers who died for views. Alright, let me get my little take on this content creator stuff and views. I would never put my life in danger for views. That's just not me. Like, I love my life. I don't love views like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, fool. Like, I just wouldn't put my life in danger for views. And I ain't lie, I know like a lot of people do that shit, but like, nah, bro. You don't gotta do that shit. The viewers gonna come when they come. If they don't come, bro, niggas not fucking with you. But I do want to see how they died, though. I do want to see like how they died. Let's get into it, though.
This Japanese man decided to reenact a popular stunt, putting so many rubber bands on a watermelon that it explodes. However, he probably didn't expect it to end like this. The man's little daughter, who was supposed to be hiding behind a tiny empty suitcase, got bored and walked away when suddenly the watermelon blew up and its upper part smashed directly into the man's face. He fell to the ground and started twitching, hiding his face in his hands.
Oh my God.
The terrified child was watching her father, completely at a loss of what to do. And then the man got up, and it turned out he was laughing. Yet in reality, a happy ending in such stories is most often an exception to the rule. So, in this video, we'll discuss YouTubers who have paid for views and subscriptions with their lives.
As always, viewer discretion is advised.
The Exploding Watermelon Challenge appeared back in 2008. Since then, countless people have tried it on camera. Some of them backed away to a safe distance before the explosion, and some even provoked the watermelon. The Japanese man from the first video was far from the only one who got hit by the exploding watermelon. On April 8, 2016, 2 Chinese men decided to do a live stream of their own watermelon explosion. After 50 minutes of putting on rubber bands, 800,000 viewers saw a chunk of the giant watermelon smash into one man's face. It seemed funny at first, but then the man showed the horrific lump that appeared after the blow. However, can this giant berry kill another YouTuber who decides to do this experiment? There have been cases of people being killed with one single blow to the head. In Britain, there's even an organization that has recorded over 80 such cases.
And I know that people get killed for this shit. Like, so people can die from this shit.
An exploding watermelon could kill
it do make sense though.
However, its impact force is very likely much weaker. If you happen to be an expert on this, please let us know in the comments so that we can get this straight once and for all. And now, let's talk about a YouTuber who was much less lucky than those knocked down by a watermelon. 29-year-old Grant Thompson was a pilot with an airline in Utah. However, later, he started building various interesting items with his own hands and trying out different hacks. So he decided to post this on YouTube. Eventually, both Grant and his audience liked it so much that a few years later, the man left his aviation job and started making YouTube content full-time. Years passed, turning him into the legend known under the moniker, the King of Random. And his channel quickly garnered millions of subscribers. However, with time, many of his experiments became increasingly dangerous, involving fire, makeshift pyrotechnics, and other flammable and highly explosive devices and substances. Was it interesting to look at?
Hell yeah!
However, how safe was it for Thompson himself and his audience? And how legal was it? I'm not the only one who had this question. So did law enforcement. In January 2018, 8 years into his YouTube career, Thompson was charged with 2 counts of second-degree felony possession of an explosive device for allegedly conducting incendiary experiments in his backyard. For this, he faced a maximum of 15 years in prison. Thompson pled guilty and agreed to a plea bargain deal with the officers. The YouTuber had to film 2 videos for his channel about the possible dangers and legal risks involved in experiments like his. He was also put on an 18-month probation. During that time, he had to abstain from dangerous experiments. Can you guess what he did next? He replaced them with another extreme hobby. Thompson returned to flights. However, not in aviation. In late July 2019, Thompson went on a paragliding trip. However, already in the air, his glider collapsed due to a sudden change in updraft. Thompson immediately tried to deploy a reserve chute, but it was too late. The man was very close to the ground, and the spare parachute had no time to open. Thompson fell and died upon impact.
Damn.
We know that the deadly plunge was recorded on camera, but the recording was obtained only by police, so the details remain unknown. In fact, Thompson had managed to trick fate and avoid getting injured in one of the dangerous experiments he'd filmed for his channel. However, if he hadn't been charged for his activity and hadn't been put on probation, he might have been busy making content on that day and wouldn't have gone out to do paragliding. At any rate, this tragedy is an incentive for me to remind you how important it is to stick to the safety regulations wherever they apply. However, could rules possibly have saved our video's next protagonist? A Danish man named Albert Dorlund published his first YouTube video in 2016. Since then, he'd been deploying his eponymous channel. He quickly found his niche by filming provocative vlogs, pranks, and sometimes very strange videos. And that's why Albert had both fans and detractors. Not everyone liked his content and the influence it had on his audience. For example, in one video, Albert's buddy put some lemon juice
what the fuck?
And then dipped his head into a toilet and flushed. The Dane even made a feature film called Team Albert, which tells the story of a high schooler trying to become an overnight sensation on YouTube. The movie might as well have been autobiographical. He'd already garnered several 100,000 subscribers on different platforms. And in July 2021, Albert went to the mountains to shoot a new video for his audience. This wasn't his first experience of making content on the rocks. However, this time, he set his sights on Mount Secheta, famous for its steep peaks. It's unknown what exactly Albert was going to do. In the thick fog, he walked onto a tall cliff, suddenly made a careless misstep, and tripped.
Damn.
Albert tried as hard as possible to regain his balance and stay on the cliff, but failed, plummeting from a height of 200 meters.
650
His companions
feet.
immediately called the rescue helicopter. However, the pilots barely managed to notice them due to the fog. When the paramedics got to Albert, all they could do was pronounce him dead. He died almost instantly upon hitting the rocks, having fallen from such a great height. Sadly, this is a
650
terrifying
feet?
testimony of how chasing success on the web can become a tragedy. And this case is far from being the only one. Greg Plitt possessed excellent knowledge of the principles that dictate social media, as well as how to stay successful for decades. He had everything it took to succeed, an interesting story and tenacity. According to Plitt himself, he first got into fitness at a very young age when his father brought home their first exercise machine. Later, Greg was inspired by his sister, who had attended the United States Naval Academy. So, first, he followed in her footsteps and went through military training, and then continued tedious and dedicated work on himself. This path rewarded him with greater and greater fame. He became a certified personal trainer in Los Angeles, ended up on hundreds of magazine covers, and won countless sports competitions. Greg also had roles in several movies, and his body became the prototype for the muscular superhero, Dr. Manhattan. In addition, Greg created his own training system, taught other people, shared his experience, and motivated his followers. However, at the same time, Plitt's success started being in charge of him, dictating its terms. To remain popular, the man needed to stay interesting and visible. For example, Greg filmed training sessions on railway tracks multiple times. Maybe he did it because gym exercises looked ordinary and boring. On January 17th, 2015, he had another filming planned on the railway tracks in Burbank, California. That time, Greg was supposed to shoot an ad for an energetic drink he'd started producing. Greg was standing on the tracks, waiting for a train. He was probably going to outrun it and show what his energetic drink could do. Finally, the train appeared from beyond the bend.
Nah, this just dumb shit.
Greg didn't move. Only a few seconds later, the man started running, but the train ended up being faster. At 4:05 in the afternoon, an onboard event recorder camera mounted in the cab of the lead locomotive recorded the man's body getting knocked off the tracks by the train.
This just dumb shit, fool. Like, when I say dumb shit, I mean dumb shit. Why the fuck do you think you can run faster than a fucking train, my nigga? A human body can run faster than a train, my nigga. That's not smart at all, my nigga. Like, come on, bro. You just wanted to die. You just wanted the easy way out, nigga. That's that, nigga. You just want the easy way out, bro. That's not dumb shit, fool. That's moral of this fucking life. Dumb shit. Dumb shit, dumb shit, dumb shit.
Impact killed Greg Plitt on the spot. The exact cause of this tragedy is still unknown. Greg might have thought the train was on a parallel track, or maybe he tripped and didn't have time to get back up, or he just didn't hear the train approaching. A reporter who arrived at the scene confirmed that the train moved virtually without sound.
I didn't hear it at all.
Another question persists,
okay.
however. Why didn't Greg's team members warn him? Probably they were just momentarily away, or maybe they also failed to hear and notice the approaching train. Be as it may, Greg violated safety regulations,
It's still-
as it's illegal to walk on railway tracks. It looks like Plitt was trying to create content that would appeal to his audience, neglecting his own safety. And that's very disturbing since people die because of their desire to show or prove something to someone in their YouTube videos. One of these
still
unfortunate
dumb
people
shit
was
for him.
Nishu Desfall. He was just 22 years old, but his YouTube channel had garnered over 3.5 million subscribers. In addition, over 2 million people followed him on Instagram. Nishu owed this popularity to tractors. He tuned and tweaked them, as well as did various stunts. And the most popular video on Nishu's channel was dedicated to tractor tug-of-war. However, the main thing that made him famous was his tractor stunts. He liked, so to say, getting the tractor to stand on its hind legs. That is, putting its front wheels up in the air and leaning the body of the vehicle.
But
as
don't
far
tell
back
me
as possible.
somebody died because they got ran over.
He often did this on muddy soil, sand, riverbanks, or freshly plowed fields. That is, on the softest and most unstable terrains he could find. So in March 2024, Nishu, surrounded by his friends, was performing a stunt of that kind on a riverbank when suddenly, the upper part of the tractor fell on the guy after the front wheels ended up almost on top of the rear wheels. A makeshift protective crossbar gave out under the weight of the several 100-kilogram engine and collapsed like cardboard. There was no chance of the man surviving. Nishu's terrified friends had to deliver the awful news to his wife. And his son, who was then 6 months old, will find out about the tragedy later and might even watch the footage of it happening. That's a bit creepy, if you ask me. Also, this just goes to show that making YouTube content can sometimes come at too high a price. Subscribers, their views, and their encouragement may push YouTubers to do increasingly dangerous stunts. That's exactly what happened to Tor Eckhoff.
Damn.
He was an
Man,
ordinary
mine
man
got
who worked at a
squished.
paint factory. However, in 2006, he moved to a remote cabin to escape family life and started a YouTube channel. In his first video, published the next day, he was simply drifting in a boat while sticking his tongue out. The next videos weren't that special, but later, Eckhoff, who adopted the moniker Oppator, started publishing quirky content that became increasingly controversial and dangerous. In one of the videos, he cut through the ice around him with an axe. This became the turning point of his entire life. In the 5th year of making videos, Tor's channel started gaining popularity thanks to the content in which tested his body with the cold environment. He kept on snow diving or taking ice baths in his underwear. Yet apart from all that, he behaved pretty strangely, which caused ambiguous attitudes to his content. Another big issue that some of his audience members had with him was that Tor kept making a point of drinking hard liquor in virtually every single one of his videos. However, some regarded the man's quirky content as artistic expression. Still, in addition to some of his actions being shocking and unusual, some of his other choices were decidedly dangerous, such as skating on broken ice. However, when Tor's new video, titled The First Snow, came out, his channel blew up and started growing exponentially. In the end, the video in which Eckhoff slammed against ice, dove into an ice bath, and consumed alcohol garnered the most views,
Bro.
105 million. After this, Tor's audience started encouraging him to make more similar content, and he gladly obliged. At the same time, the man was facing more and more allegations of promoting alcohol use and dangerous behavior. The experts were unanimous. The combination of alcohol intoxication and extreme cold can be deadly. Tor, however, disagreed. He didn't think his stunts could harm him in the least. He didn't often recall a certain event that happened to him at the very start of his YouTube career. In 2007, Tor was doing some nighttime skating on a lake when suddenly a barely audible cracking sound started coming from under his feet. It signaled a disaster. The
Damn.
ice cracked and the man fell into the cold water. The heavy skates were pulling him to the bottom, and the thin ice kept breaking whenever Tor tried to get out. It was nothing short of a miracle that he managed to do it. After this, he started seriously training to dive into the water and get out of it. However, even this didn't save him in the end. On November 26,
What the fuck?
2021, Tor went to film a video on an icy lake. For some reason, on that day, he didn't take any of his friends or assistants with him. Eckhoff dived into the ice hole, spent several seconds in the water, and started trying to get out, but found it hard to do so. Panicked, Tor started screaming for help at the top of his lungs. Luckily, a man was walking nearby and heard Eckhoff's call. The passerby called the rescuers, realizing that he wouldn't be able to tackle him alone. Divers arrived at the scene quickly, pulled Tor out of the water, and performed CPR on him. After this, he was hospitalized, but all resuscitation efforts ended up in vain. The YouTuber died on the following day. As fate would have it, this happened just 5 days after posting a video of him celebrating his 57th birthday titled, "I Am Not Dead." Some of you have mentioned that I seem to
That's
judge
crazy.
when I talk about my videos. I truly don't mean to, but there are controversial stories where it's hard to say whether someone considered their own safety or understood how their actions might impact both themselves and their viewers. Please share your thoughts on Apatow and the other YouTubers mentioned in this video. Do you think they influenced their audience and, in turn, were influenced by them? And most importantly, take care of yourselves.
Nah, bro. I ain't gonna lie. The train jump, bro. That's not smart, fool. That's not smart. I ain't lie. They just doing unusual shit, fool. They just doing unusual shit. Like, you don't have to do that unusual shit to get views. You don't.